Good morning, everybody, or shall I say good afternoon, or even good evening. Well, that's the beauty of distance education. You can watch this video at any point in time when it's convenient for you, and you can even rewatch this video if you want to make sure you understood what I just presented. Wow, you get to listen to Mr. Bognaw twice? Wow, I want to listen to myself twice. Anyways, today in this video, I'm going to be going over two words that you may have heard about in previous classes that you may have taken: democracies and republics. What's the difference between the two? Well, my first question to you is America a democracy or is it a republic? Let's take a look at some definitions here. Democracies originated in Greece. It is a system where everyone participates in every single decision Excuse me. Hello? Hey, I can't talk. I'm talking about democracies right now. Yes, democracies. No, America is not a democracy. I'll talk to you later. Alrighty. Wait, you just heard that America is not a democracy? Well, when you think about it, can you go into the U.S. Capitol building as an individual and walk in and say, hey, I want to propose a bill? You can't. You have representatives to do that. So representatives is one huge factor, is the defining definition of what a republic is. So democracy, again, let's recap. Democracies are true rule by the people, where people are involved in every single decision-making process. And a republic is where you have representatives who represent you in government. So are we a democracy or a republic? Well, in some ways, we're kind of both, Power is resided within the people, as we've discussed with the term popular sovereignty. And if you don't like an elected official, you can vote them out. That's democratic, right? So we'll get into the nitty-gritty of the arguments between whether or not we're a democracy or a republic. But in this video specifically, we're going to go over representation. Who are our representatives at the federal level, the national level, the central level? All means the same thing: federal, national, central level of government. Let's take a look. Wow, I'm glowing. Well, I'm glowing because I have my iPad here, and I'm actually going to be using this iPad to go ahead and explain to you who our representatives are at the federal level of our U.S. government. We're going to talk about state level next chapter when we talk about federalism, so keep that in mind. So these are our representatives at the federal level of our system of government in the United States of America. So let's go down to the iPad here, and let's write the first word: republic. Yes, republic. So as I've mentioned before, republics originated in Rome, and republics' defining feature is representation. So you have representatives who work for you in our system of government. So remember the three R's. So I'm going to write that down, the three R's. The three R's are Rome, republic, and representation. Well, my handwriting is bad, but you get the idea. Rome, republic, and representation. So who represents us in our system of government here? Well, in our system of government, we have what's called a bicameral legislature. Yes, bicameral. So what does that mean, bicameral? Well, if you remember in middle school English class, you learned about prefixes and suffixes. So the word, or I should say the prefix bi, means two, and the suffix cameral means chambers. So in our system of government at the federal level, we have two chambers in our legislative branch. The legislative branch are the people who represent us. It's Article 1 of the Constitution, and it's Article 1 of the Constitution for a reason, and the longest article too, because it talks about who represents us. And so our system is what's called a bicameral legislature. And the bicameral legislature consists of the House of Representatives and the Senate. House of Representatives and the Senate. Okay? In the House of Representatives, the number of representatives are proportionally determined. Proportional. I'll take a look and explain to you what that means in a moment. And in the Senate, we have equal representation. So in every state, depending on population, you get a number of House of Representatives and you get a number of senators. In the Senate, as I mentioned, you have equal representation, and each state has 2 senators. In the House of Representatives, it is proportionally based based off population. And every 10 years, when we take the census, when we count the population, we see a change in the number of representatives in each state. So, for example, the census was just taken in Nevada, and we have 4 House of Representatives. But in the 10 years since we've taken the last census, more people have moved to Nevada from many different states. I'm talking about you, California. And we might see another representative in our state because our population has grown in 10 years. And so it's proportionally represented based on population. So you have the House of Representatives, and then you have the Senate. The House, members of the House serve 2-year terms, and members of the Senate serve 6-year terms. Why is it 2-year terms for the House of Representatives? Well, since the House of Representatives are measured proportionally by population, you are closer to your House of Representative than you are to your senator, who represents the entire state. So your House of Representatives represents the area that you live in. And so if you don't like them, you can vote them out every 2 years. Or if you do like them, you can re-elect them and keep them as your representative in the federal system of our U.S. government. So another topic we won't get into detail in this video, but we will in a future class period, are congressional districts. And so when you have a certain number of House of Representatives, they represent a certain area in your state. So take a look at the state of Nevada here. We have 4 House of Representatives, which means we have 4 areas which these Congress people represent. So as you can see here, the first congressional district is this teeny tiny green area, which represents literally Las Vegas. And then you have Congressional District 3, which represents Henderson, Summerlin, and some areas of Las Vegas as well. And then you have Congressional District 4, which is rural Nevada. And then you have Congressional District 2, which represents northern Nevada, which is rural as well. So when you take a look at it, people are closer to their House of Representatives, and senators, since there's 2 senators, no matter how big or small your state is, you are closer to your House of Representative than you are to your senator. And so that's why House of Representatives serve 2-year terms, because if you don't like how they're representing your area, let's say you live in Congressional District 1 in this teeny tiny little area here, you can vote them out after 2 years. So that is part of the reason why they are serving 2-year terms. And the reason why Congressional District 1 is its size is because the amount of people living in that district is about the same as the amount of people living in Congressional District 2, for example. We also talked about the census earlier, and we won't get into detail with that, but if we do gain a new representative, that means we will have to redraw the lines in the state of Nevada of how people will be represented. That's a completely different story, completely different class period. Just keep that in mind. So where did we get these ideas from? Well, now we're tying it back to the chapter that you just read. You read about 2 plans. You read about the New Jersey plan, and you read about the Virginia plan. And so when we write the New Jersey plan here in our little visual here, New Jersey plan, and then we write Virginia plan here. When we were creating our new Constitution because the Articles of Confederation failed, the New Jersey plan argued that every state should have equal representation no matter what the population is. But the larger states argued, no. We have more people living in our states, so we should have more representatives. So our Virginia plan is proportional. But everyone in the smaller states were saying, no, it should be equal. There should be just 2 representatives in each state. So what did we do? We created what's called, the Connecticut Compromise. Yes, and if you take a look at the first 7 letters here, the way to remember the Connecticut Compromise is it connected the Virginia plan to the New Jersey plan. Isn't that crazy? So the Connecticut Compromise, this is also known as the Great Compromise, depending on who you talk to. And so the Great Compromise is what created our bicameral legislature. It was the biggest compromise when writing the Constitution. So instead of just having equal representation or having proportional representation, we have both because we have 2 houses. We have a bicameral legislature. The way to remember the Connecticut plan, as I've stated here, is there's 7 letters at the beginning. Connecticut plan. It connected the Virginia plan, the New Jersey plan. So how do you remember the Virginia plan? Well, take a look at Virginia plan. If you circle all the I's, okay, there's 3 I's. The more I's that you have, the more individuals you have, the more representatives you have. That's how you remember Virginia plan. The New Jersey plan, take a look. If you circle all the E's, there's 3 E's. Remember equal representation for a New Jersey plan. That's how you remember the two. Alrighty, so that is what makes up our Congress. Congress are the House of Representatives and the Senate. And these parts here make up the legislative branch. In our U.S. system of government here. Now, in the Constitutional Convention, they were asking, so how should we deal with slaves? Well, that was the number one question when it came to creating our Constitution. Now that we've established that we're going to have the Great Compromise and we're going to, in one house, proportionally represent the number of representatives based on how many people live in a state, were slaves considered people? Some argued yes, some argued no. But during this time, again, we stated this was an imperfect document. During this time, many people agreed we should not fully count slaves toward the population count, toward determining how many representatives we should have. So in cases of slaves, if there were, for example, let's just take an arbitrary number here. Let's say there was 300 slaves. Or let's make this simple. Let's say we have 500 slaves in a state. So instead of counting 500 people towards the population count, you would count 300 people, 300 slaves. Why is this? Because of the 3/5 compromise. So why did they do this originally? Well, the southern states actually fought for the 3/5 compromise. Originally, they weren't going to count slaves at all, but they were thinking in their heads, if we do count slaves, well, we're not going to count them as a full person, but we're going to count them as 3/5 of a person. We can still add on to the total number of people living in the state, which means more representatives, which means more power in the representative government. That was obviously amended with the Reconstruction Amendments, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments after the Civil War. Alrighty. So now I have this map displayed on my iPad here. So if any of you are familiar with the Electoral College, this will look familiar. We're not going to talk about the Electoral College now because that's a lesson of its own. But the Electoral College is based on the number of House of Representatives and Senators you have in each state. So if you take a look at this Electoral College map, there is a simple formula to determine the number of senators and the number of House of Representatives each state has. So for example, if we take a look at Nevada here, yes, Nevada, we have 6 electoral votes towards the election of a president. So we have 6 total representatives in our state. That's what the number is based off of when we take a look at the Electoral College. So when we have 6 total representatives, all you need to do is subtract 2 to figure out the number of House of Representatives. So remember, there's always 2 senators thanks to the New Jersey Plan and Connecticut Compromise. There's always equal representation, equal number of senators, no matter which state you're in. So you always have to subtract 2 to find out the number of House of Representatives. So in Nevada, we have 4 House of Representatives, because 6 minus 2 is 4. Because we have 4 House of Representatives and 2 senators. Those are the people that represent us at our federal level of government. And then in California, you have 55 electoral votes. You have 55 total representatives. So you have 55 minus 2. You have 53 House of Representatives, and you have 2 senators. So that is how you determine the number of representatives that you have based on looking at the Electoral College map. Alrighty, so hopefully you have a better understanding of who our representatives are in our federal level of U.S. government. And again, just to recap, our representatives consists of members of both the House of Representatives and the Senate. They make up our bicameral legislature in our Congress. Their main job is to create bills and pass laws and to confirm presidential appointments. So again, the Senate has a huge impact on whether or not we will replace our late Ruth Bader Ginsburg before or after the election. Those representatives are Congress, as I mentioned, and Congress is part of Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution. And they are our representatives in our Republican form of government, our republic form of government. Not the political party, but the terminology republic, our representatives, Rome, representatives, republic. So another factor that I mentioned, but I didn't explain quite too in detail is the Electoral College. That is another example of how we are not a democracy because we don't vote directly for our president. We vote for electors to vote for our president. Our electors are based off the number of representatives we have. It's going to get confusing at this point, so I'm just going to stop there. But just know we will take a look at the Electoral College in detail later on. The main purpose of this video was to take a look at who our representatives are at the federal level of government, and hopefully you understand, based off of the Constitutional Convention, how we got to where we're at today. So if you have any questions, let me know. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.